Hello and welcome to this, the 17th of Ovid's Heroides, a letter from Helen of Sparta to Paris, who has pitched up from Troy in Sparta, come to stay with Helen and her husband Menelaus, and then tried to seduce Helen away from Menelaus to persuade her to leave with him. You can see his letter, which this is a reply to, last week. That was last week's film, so if you'd like the backstory, it's there for you. This poem obviously stands on its own, as do they all. So Helen begins by saying, "Now that your letter has offended my eyes," I just couldn't like her more. She says that her husband and she made Paris welcome, even though he is diversa gente, he's a different race. This is a really big deal because all the way through Paris's letter, he was very keen in sort of building himself up to slightly knock Helen down. He is every bad boyfriend I have ever known. Not just had, known. And so he spent quite a lot of time saying, well, obviously where you're from isn't as rich as where I'm from. Where you're from is a bit rubbish. Where you're from. She is quite keen to sort of fight back her corner here. And so she should be. So she says, you know, obviously you think that where I'm from is rustica, it's rough or rustic. Sparta is famously a sort of very rough part of Greece. In the narratives that we have of it, they are almost always written by non-Spartans, by Athenians first and then Romans later, and Sparta is always kind of presented to us as somewhere where everyone is very fit and healthy and not particularly cultured, and that obviously doesn't quite coincide with our notion of Helen as the most beautiful woman in the world who sort of fits anywhere as this incredible addition to it. So she basically says, well, fine, I'm rustic then, if that's how you feel about it. But we made you really welcome, even though you were from a different race entirely. And so your declaration of love is inuria, she says. It's an injury. You know, you're injuring my marriage. So she's taking it quite seriously. This isn't the sort of flighty Helen that we've come to expect from other narratives, perhaps. She says, even so, even though you've injured me and called where I come from names, she says, I'm not showing you a sad face, or I can't tell you how much I love the Latin for this, or a durus superciliis, or a hard eyebrow. Why has this phrase not passed into English? I long to show somebody a hard eyebrow, and indeed, I may yet. She has a reputation to preserve. She says, do you think that you'll get lucky, I paraphrase very slightly, because Theseus kidnapped me once before? Helen was kidnapped. It's a really grimy story, actually. She's kidnapped by Theseus when he is probably in his 50s, and she is either 7 or 10, depending on the version of the narrative, because he and his friend Perithous, I think, have decided they both would like a daughter of Zeus to marry. So Perithous goes for Persephone, who is obviously quite busy being someone else's wife in the underworld. She just can't move for men abducting her and trying to make her a forced bride. And Theseus decides to abduct Helen. The fact that she is a child is obviously not a particular obstacle to him. And she describes this in a very surprising way. She describes him as having taken her whim by force. But she retained her virginity through this experience. She says he only managed to take a few kisses from her. That's line 27. But even so, her reputation, she feels, has been damaged by this experience. So Paris thinks that he can persuade her to elope or abduct her because Theseus had abducted her when she was, let's remind ourselves, an actual child. She says, line 35, not that I'm angry with you, because who could be cross with a lover? She's playing a very long game here, Helen. She says, I just hope that your love is real. I mean, you know, this adventurer turns up on her doorstep swearing undying love. You can see why she might be a bit cautious. Line 46, and the bit after it, she says, do you think basically that I'll be up for this affair because my mother was up for having an affair? You're wrong, because her lover was covered in feathers. This does slightly imply that if Paris were to cover himself in a big feather costume, she might be interested. I don't think that's what we're aiming for here. She is reminding us, of course, of the story of Leda, her mother, being seduced by Zeus, who had taken on the form of a swan, which is why Helen has a very close connection to her father, the swan / king of the gods. She says, you know, well, Paris is, you know, you were boasting about your ancestors, and he boasted a lot about his ancestors in the last poem. But I'm the daughter of Jupiter. Kignodecaptor, she says, the feathery deceiver, the swan deceiver. I mean, I just can't like this more, basically. I've always enjoyed it, as you know. There is an earlier poem, which is Hermione's poem, where she talks a lot about the deceitful swan, the lies of a swan. It just never gets old for me. I wish I were beyond this joke. I'm simply not. You've boasted about Troy being wealthy, she says, but it's a barbarian country. So here we have some more pushback against what was basically Paris's negging. You know, you should be interested in me because I'm from somewhere really rich and you're just from Sparta. And she's saying, well, yeah, okay, you're from somewhere really rich, but that's barbarian and I'm a Greek. And in Ovidian terms, being Greek is better than being barbarian. It's obviously worse than being Roman because now it's the time of Ovid. But these are statuses that she's not going to overlook. It's okay that Paris is richer than she is, but that doesn't make him better, at least not in this regard. She says, you offer me presents. He's made a huge list of gifts that he's prepared to make to her. But she says, I'd rather follow you than your gifts. I'm not against gifts. Couldn't love her more. I'm not against gifts. Presents is good. But line 72, she says, Actor quae preciosa facit. It's the giver who makes them precious. So she'd want them because they were from Paris, not because of what they're worth. Line 80, she says, you've been flirting with me openly at dinner, i.e. when Menelaus has been present. Nil pudet hunc, she says, he has no shame, is what she's been saying to herself. And he does sound like he's been quite cheesy in his flirtation. I'm not going to lie. He has been writing. I honestly am not paraphrasing this at all, except to translate it into English. He has been writing, I love Helen, in wine that he spilled on the table, like someone at actual school carving into a desk with a compass. I've no doubt they don't have desks or compasses at school anymore, and I've just revealed that I'm 400 years old, but there it is, too late now. But line 93, she says, your beauty is special. All the girls want your embrace. And yet at the same time, she is Helen, remember, the most beautiful woman in the world. She says, do you think only Paris has eyes? Do you think other young men aren't interested in her, essentially? If you'd come sooner, she says, when all the Greeks were vying to be my husband, if I'd seen you then, line 105, she says, you'd have been first in 1,000. The problem is he wasn't here until after she'd got married, so now she would have to lose status and do something shameful, have an affair, if she were going to be involved with him. And then she reminds us of the story of the judgment of Paris. He had obviously presented this story to her in his suit. He'd said, you know, that you were promised to me by the goddess Venus. And she says, you know, this is an incredible story where you judge the three goddesses and one of them offers you a kingdom and one of them offers you, you know, power and war and one of them offers you me. You know, I'm really flattered to hear that, you know, Venus thinks I'm that pretty. That's excellent news. Thanks very much. It's nice to know that I'm worth a kingdom, you know, that she is as valuable to him that when he's given these alternate bribes, he chooses her over a whole kingdom. That is a good way to impress her. Maybe slagging off where she's from, not so good. Maybe saying that she is worth more than a kingdom, slightly better. She says either... I love this, but I'm not going to skip over it even though we're running a bit late, sorry. Line 136, 137, she says, I would have to be made of iron not to love you, and believe me, I am not made of iron. I think I do believe her. She says, either hide your love or stop it. Actually, why stop it? Just hide it. She changes her mind really quickly. Yeah, just stop it. Don't stop it. She is very much offering with one hand and hiding with another. I love this. She reveals, of course, that Menelaus has gone away. This is something he's berated for by ancient authors all the time, that he leaves Helen with Paris, which is an act of questionable judgment, considering. And when he goes away, he makes her promise to look after their guest. She says he's very suspicious because I'm so beautiful, but he's also trusting because because of the way I live. I'm so, you know, dutiful and good. I don't flirt. So he's suspicious of the beauty, but trusting because of the way I live. My honesty makes him secure. My beauty makes him afraid, she says. This is the sort of terrible penalty of loving Helen, that, you know, she is too extraordinary. But it's also the bond that she shares with Paris. She says, your beauty, line 180, your beauty captures me just like mine captures you. The nights are long, she says, line 181, and we come together in conversation. They get together at night and secretly speak about whether they can elope. She wants him, but she can't have him because she's married. And anyway, she says, a stranger's love isn't reliable. Erat, it wanders. She says, ask Hypsipyle, ask Ariadne. So some earlier heroines from earlier letters. Oh, and there's also Oinone, she says, your wife that you haven't even lied about. So at least there's that, I suppose. She says, I'll be called an adulteress, line 218. I'll take the blame. She's absolutely right, of course. No one ever really blames Paris. She always does take the blame. And look what happened to Medea, she says, when she ran off with Jason. Another earlier letter. It's like a lovely back catalogue of everything. She says, you know, obviously it's not going to be as bad as that. But then Medea wasn't afraid when she ran off. So, difficult. If I came with you, she says, there would be war, line 245. And you are a lover, 253, not a fighter. He will be revealed as a coward in, for example, the Iliad. He's not a particularly good fighter. Your efforts would pay off in a different campaign, she says. Love poetry often presents love as a war. So that's what she's referencing there. And anyway, she says 263, she ends by saying, you're going too fast. Delay might be your friend. So she always leaves a little bit of a gap. She leaves the door open even as she's closing it. And that, of course, is all we need to know, that she will eventually elope with Paris. Next time we have got, I should know this, I think it's Leander to Hero. It's another of the men letters. We have 2 more men letters and 2 more lady letters before the end. So Leander to Hero is what you get next time. That will be number 18. Okay, near the end. Oh, so exciting. I'll see you next time. Mwah. Bye.